Mixed martial arts. No one else talks about it. Except us. On the ball.
Dublin City FM.
Hello everybody and welcome to MMA on Dublin City FM, courtesy of the On The Ball Sunday Sports Show. I am joined in studio as always by the On The Ball by Steady Weekly Chris, and we have Kenny Murphy on the line. Hello Kenny.
Hello Mr. Marshall, how are you?
I'm alright.
I'm just very happy I got introduced this week as opposed to every other week where I'm joined by Kenny Murphy.
I got a juicy brown envelope, Ken, but you're not getting any of it. We've got a rake load of stuff to talk about. First off, after the Liverpool game, how's your heart, Ken? Because we know this is a big deal for you.
Ticking over, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still feeling awful, but we'll move on. We'll push on. We're going to talk about Cage Warriors from last night. We're going to talk about War Machine and his run-in with the law. We're going to talk about last night's UFC show, which is just in my all-time top 10 shows that I forgot about. We're also going to talk about Carl Brendard and Mike King, the fallout from a drug suspension, and the delaying of the Jones-Cormier fight. So much to talk about. Quick results from last night. Cage Warriors 70 in the Helix. We're going to give you the main events. That's right, Cage Warriors.
Close to home.
There you go. Should have gone. The Helix is such a great venue for mixed martial arts. It's just
really is,
perfect. So we had Andrew Fisher lose to Artem Lovlov, who me and Ken have basically seen at every show we've ever been at, but round 3 via TKO. Paul Redmond defeated Alex Cervezas in round 2 by submission. Huge win for Paul Redmond. He's just on an absolute roll. And in the main event, we have Joseph Duffy defeating Damien Lapsus by submission, rear naked choke. It was said to be a fairly exciting main event. The entire card is available to be streamed. If you go to cagewarriors.com, you'll see all the information there if you could not attend or you missed it last night. To add to the many drug suspensions over the last few weeks, Mike King, who of course was Carl Brendard's opponent at the recent UFC show in the O2, failed his drug test. He was tested on the day of the show and banned substances. So basically these guys won the Fight of the Night bonus, or one of the two bonuses, and 50 grand was given to Brendard because of Mike King testing positive, and Carl Brendard gave it to Temple Street Children's Hospital.
I think there's a kind of a miscommunication here. He said he was going to give a portion of it, and everywhere that's been reported that he gave 50 grand. For all you know, of course.
I was thinking that this is quite incredible if the man was to give 50 grand, because not to comment on Carl's living standards, but this is his first big payoff. So one would think he mightn't be as affluent as somebody who can give 50 quid away or 50,000 away. Do we know how much for portion? He said.
Like I said, I'm guessing a tenner, but no, honestly, I have no idea. He might have given a grand or something, but I wouldn't say he gave 50 grand away.
Ken, this usually happens, people getting their proverbials in a twist, but does Mike King being suspended or being snagged for testing positive for a banned substance, this is are we going down a slippery slope here? Is it getting worse, or are people just getting caught more?
That's it, yeah. People are getting caught more.
Because everybody's saying, Ken, the sport, these black guys on the sport, we had the pull-away brawl between Jones and Cormier, and now we're having, like, wave after wave of people being busted. And I think people are very naive to think that this is new, as in people are just getting on to stuff now. And in fact, people getting busted is fantastic.
I would like to think that with the growth of the sport into Europe now, especially, that they're kind of just cutting down on this.
I don't know if that is the main reason. I just know that they've been under so much pressure over the last few years. And
the factor is Nevada. Nevada have stepped it up and started out of competition testing, and that's got Vitor and Chael and Vonderlei. Vonderlei ran the back door.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
But to me, the hysteria reminds me a lot of the Lance Armstrong thing. People have him so heavily vilified, and largely because he was so vehement against it. But I mean, at the time, cycling was a drug sport. Everybody who was anybody in cycling was on drugs that you had to be to compete. And there's kind of a public naivety that this doesn't go on. I think that there's, Mark Bocek last week said 90% of people in MMA are probably on steroids. So
I meant to ask you about that, Ken.
It's just, he also said that one of the reasons he was retiring was because women are getting so much press in the UFC. So, you can't necessarily take everything he says as the gospel truth. But it's a reality of this sport. It's most people do 3 different workouts a day. They do their wrestling, their jiu-jitsu, and their striking. And your body, for an 8, 12, or even 16-week camp, which is apparently what Gray Maynard had. Fat Lolly could have did him. Your body cannot hold up to that, and so steroids and stuff help you recover quicker. So most of the athletes use them, and then you have a lot of people who get that mentality of everyone else is doing it, so I will as well. So it's only the really, really either broke people or the strong-minded people who are very anti-drugs who aren't doing it. So I mean, people, you kind of hear 50%, you hear 90%. I'm sure the figure probably lies somewhere in between that, and that's just the reality of it. And you've also have a lot of fans who have the mentality of, look, just let them all take what they want, and then it's a playing field. And I'm not advocating that, but certainly, it goes on in the sport, and people need to start realising that.
It does make Pendred's victory all the more impressive, considering he went up a division as well, and his opponent was drugged out of it.
But yeah, I mean, I often kind of because if you ever look at the studies done of people who fail drug tests, their wins and their losses, it's 50-50. So to me, a lot of the times a drug test is just an IQ test. So I'm always going to say, oh well, he's like people say Anderson Silva has done extremely well because he had so many opponents who failed after the fact. But I don't know that Anderson Silva is clean. You know what I mean? So I'm hesitant to giving someone more credit because they beat someone who was on drugs.
I had a dream last night that Anderson Silva against Nick Diaz was taking place on Portmarnock Beach, and it was a fiver, and it was a fiver in, and me and you, Ken, had an awful hard time negotiating our way to which part of the beach we thought it was going to be on.
Let's make it happen.
Let's bring it to Dublin. Okay, UFC Fight Night 47 took place last night from Bangor, Maine. And did you get to see any of this, Ken?
I saw the whole thing, yeah.
Oh, shocking.
Well, actually, I missed I don't know, did you see much of it yourself, Neil, or any?
Top 3 fights.
Okay, because the prelims were on BT as usual, but for whatever reason, there was a game of, what's that crap sport called? Cricket on, and it went on. So they just had the cricket on, they just didn't show the fight, so all I saw was prelims with the entire main
Sorry, Kenny, just very quickly, our poor sound engineer here is a big fan of cricket and he's not very happy with you.
Well, he is a poor unfortunate soul then, I'll agree there.
He's
oh my God.
He's gesturing. Oh, that's
Ken,
family-friendly show. Let's just say that.
You're a clever man, Ken, right?
Ancient man would square up and fight each other. That's a real sport. Listen, none of this messing around with sticks.
As an intelligent, self-promoting person, Ken, you should know the crossover between cricket fans and MMA fans is huge, and we have just absolutely shot ourselves in the foot in terms of listenership here.
Ah well.
Okay, so we had Ryan Bader against.
Ryan Bader, yeah.
Why not? Ryan Bader against. I'll let you take this.
Yeah, I was hoping Owen St. Preux.
Owen St. Preux.
This was 5 rounds of not much, and
yep.
If you ever hear criticism of Ryan Bader, it's that he either loses his big fights or he wins them by hitting his opponent, and that was kind of the case here. He lay on Owen St. Preux enough to take 3 or 4 of the rounds, depending on which of the judges you were. This was a tedious fight. Bader wins, but he doesn't. He's the number 8. He beat the number 10 unconvincingly. So, that's where Bader is, and that's where his career is going to be. He's at that level. He's never going to beat your DCs, your John Joneses. So the co-main, the Ross Pearson Gray Maynard fight, that was the big story.
Yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, Gray Maynard only came in, I think, it was pretty much the start of this month as a replacement.
To be fair, though, let's just clarify. He was due on this card anyway.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
His opponent got hurt, and so did Ross's.
Okay,
well, neither was taking this fight, on a short notice.
Gray Maynard has really kind of. What's the story with him, Ken? Like, during the Frankie Edgar stuff, he seemed like just this guy that was going to be around for a while.
Yeah. Okay, so Gray Maynard was a wrestler who came into MMA, and he got really good at striking really fast, and he's one of those wrestlers who decided they were just going to strike, okay? When he got up to the championship match with Frankie Edgar, he had those 2 sensational fights, the first of which he won the first round at 10-8. He destroyed Frankie Edgar, the only round in UFC history where someone was knocked down 3 times. He was that close to winning the fight, but Frankie came back and they ended up having a draw. They rematched in October of that year, October 2011. The exact same thing happened in the first, and Edgar again came back, but then Edgar came back, took over, and knocked Gray Maynard out in the 4th round. That was the first time Gray Maynard had ever been knocked out. 6 months later, he had a tepid decision win over Clay Guida, but after that, he's had 3 fights. This is the 3rd time he's been knocked out. And keep in mind, he'd never been knocked out before Frankie did it. And I mean, when you talk about someone's chin being gone, I've never seen a fighter whose chin has gone so dramatically. We all know Nate Diaz is a volume puncher, doesn't knock people out. He knocked Gray Maynard out clean. Do you think this
is all a byproduct of the Frankie Edgar fights?
No, I think obviously he knows he wrestled. He fought 9 rounds in those 2 fights, and you're obviously going to exchange a lot of strikes. But again, Frankie Edgar is not somebody who has a great deal of power. I just think it's the cumulative of. It's like they talk about wrestlers have a certain amount of bumps on their bump card. With fighters, your chin, you've got a certain amount you can take, and then it becomes kind of tender, and that switch can get flicked very easily. I read an article by Dr. Johnny Benjamin, who is a doctor who's covered mixed martial arts very closely over the last 4 or 5 years, and he talks about that there's a nerve in your jaw, and when it goes, it's just gone, and it's the same thing as with Chuck Liddell, and so I very, very much hope that that's the last we see of Gray Maynard, because it can only be a bad thing for his long-term health. Briefly,
any other notes from the show?
There was 2 huge fights in the undercard, which was very strange, which was Sarah McMahon coming off her loss to Ronda Rousey.
Yes.
Fought Laura Murphy. She tried to turn this into more of a striking battle, not use her wrestling so much, which was an odd tactic, and indeed it almost cost her. She did take a split decision win. It should have been a unanimous decision, but she only won 2 rounds to 1, so any chance of her kind of getting back in the championship mix really, really kind of disappeared here. And then there was an eliminator at 125, Zach Makovsky, who's come over from Bellator and looked very, very good at 125. And it was believed he was going to get the winner of Demetrius Johnson, Chris Carriasso, was fighting Jussier Formiga, a fight he was expected to win, and he lost 2 rounds to 1. So that was that. And also there was the great Tim Boach. I can't even remember who his opponent was, but Tim Boach, Tavares, Tavares, yeah. And Tim Boach lost the first round, and this was kind of very much he needed a win for his career here. He was going to get cut if he lost, and this was in his hometown, and he came back in the second round, a little bit like his famous Yushin Okami comeback, and he knocked out Brad Tavares, and this was a hometown pop, and I mean, it wasn't a tenth of what Conor McGregor got in Dublin last month, but it was nice.
Very good. Okay, Ken, 2 more things to touch on very briefly. Obviously, John Jones has pulled out of the Daniel Cormier fight. They're rescheduling it for January 3rd. We'll talk when we get close to date about Cormier and what he has now against John Jones, on the idea that he has a severe knee injury that he was going to hold off surgery on until after Jones' fight, and Jones twists his ankle, and the fight's postponed. So that's going to be very interesting. But what I want to know now, just looking forward to that fight, is it going to lose the tremendous amount of momentum it has because of it being delayed, or do you think with enough heavy promotion and just showing the press conference ruckus and so on and so forth leading up to the fight on January 3rd that it will do as well business-wise as it was going to do if it was next month?
I think it'll end up doing as well, and maybe
really?
Better, because I really think these two do dislike each other, and they'll ramp it up. And there's also the fact that the UFC is trying to put either Johnny Hendricks against Robbie Lawler, or bigger still, Gina Carano, Ronda Rousey on the undercard of this fight. So I expect it to still be a killer. And if they get Carano and Rousey, then you could do definitely $1 million plus of this fight.
Okay, and we'd be remiss if we didn't speak about War Machine and his antics over the last few weeks. He was taken in. Indeed, he was taken in and arrested finally after being on the run for over a week. Yesterday morning, our time. Ken, so give us a little quick break.
Morning, our time.
Our time.
Any time exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously this Christie's version of the story, and there's her version of the story is that he arrived at her house at 2:00 in the morning. She was there with a friend of hers, a male friend. War Machine started laying punches into the chap who ran for his life.
We don't know who he is, do we?
No.
Okay.
Well, we do. He was another fighter, but not a named fighter.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I don't really know how we want to get on daytime radio about it, but he took her into the bedroom. He beat her so badly that she broke 18 different bones in her face. He punctured her liver. He beat her very, very, very badly, and he cut several times with a blunt knife, cut her hair off with the blunt knife, then went to get a sharper knife, she believes, to kill him. She jumped out the window of their house naked and bleeding and ran until she got help. War Machine has now been apprehended. It's an ugly story.
It is
it's one of those,
horrific.
it's not that surprising what Sheen is, you know.
He's an absolute
He's not
lunatic.
right. He's better in jail.
He truly is. He is.
That's his third strike as well.
His track record is ridiculous.
He's been in prison
It's very,
twice, yeah.
It's very, very colourful. Obviously, Ken gave some of the details there, but if you want to, the arrest report basically has come out, and you'll find it pretty easily online. But like we've discussed as much as we can at this time of the day. You know what I mean, on a sports show about it. So if you do want to check out how much of an absolute villain he is, go and read the arrest report. And yeah, it's a horrible story, but thankfully he's out of the public domain now. And Ken, thank you very much for joining us. We are going to be back the same time next week. If you want to hear any archives of this show or our wrestling version, you can always log on to thisaintfake.com.
103.2 Dublin City FM. Exciting radio for our exciting city.